Our Exeter Housing Advisory Committee meeting. I am going to read the declaration that I need to read, and then we'll get started. As chair of the Exeter Housing Advisory Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. On September 28, 2020, public notice of this meeting was posted on the bulletin board and other places at the town office at 10 Front Street. As provided in that public notice, the public may access the meeting online and via phone. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking roll attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, and if so, who that person is, son, daughter, spouse, etc., which is required under the right to know law. Okay. So I'm going to start with myself, and then I'm just going to go down the line. So I'm Nancy Belanger, chair of the Housing Advisory Committee, and I am in the room alone. Lindsay?
Hi, Lindsay Sonnet, and I'm in the room alone.
Dave Sharples, town planner.
Sharples in the room alone.
Lovey Roundtree, our select board representative.
Lovey Roundtree, if I'm in the room alone right now.
Pete Cameron. Pete, are you there? You're muted.
I see Pete talking.
Okay, Pete, you're muted. Hello. Pete, do you want to introduce yourself now? You couldn't be heard before.
Hello?
Hi.
Oh, I showed up. Sorry.
You did. I need you to speak, though. We didn't hear you introduce yourself. Could you introduce yourself and tell us if anyone's in the room with you?
All right, I'll try it again. My name is Pete Cameron. I'm the planning board representative. I'm alone in my office.
Thank you. Also, Sarah Reitzman is with us. Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sarah Reitzman, and my husband is in the room.
And Darren Wyndham, our Economic Development Director. Darren, would you like to introduce yourself?
You just did, and I am in the room alone.
Whatever. Okay. Margaret Randolph and John Randolph. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. We're going to start our meeting a little out of order of the agenda. I'm going to save the meeting minutes for last. So I'm going to have Darren introduce our guests this morning.
Okay, thank you, Nancy, and good morning, everybody. So just quickly, I want to mention that as an economic developer, I think probably I can confidently say that probably over the next 20 years, the number one economic development problem for the Seacoast is going to be workforce housing. And I think Sarah Reitzman shares that same view. And we were talking, and she introduced me to Maggie and John Randolph. John's a builder, Maggie's an architect. They own Harmony Homes Assisted Living Center in Durham. They are Exeter residents. And they have a concept that I would love to see. I think it's a fantastic concept. I think it makes a ton of sense. It's long overdue in this area, and they're doing it in Durham, and I can't wait for them to show you what they're doing. And I'd love for them to bring it to Exeter next. Thank you much. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to kick it over to them.
Well, when we start this, usually people ask us how we got into it. Besides Maggie being an architect and myself being a builder, how do we start getting into workforce housing, affordable housing, the comments. We started an assisted living out of Harmony Homes at Hickory Pond in Durham. If you've passed, it used to be the golf course on 108. And we started that in 2011. We had 15 employees at its max. We started with 2 employees. We now have 80 employees. And so 2 years ago, we're struggling to fill our staff. And we sat down with them and asked them, what do you guys need? And they said they don't make enough money to live close to work. Everyone's commuting nearly an hour. And when you look at childcare, they're possibly driving from Milton to South Berwick, Maine to drop kids off with parents, driving over to Durham, working a 10-hour day, and then repeating that. And so we financially pushed ourselves, and we gave that year 20% raises and benefits and everything else to try to increase things. But really the thing that kept coming back to is they needed to live closer to work. And really one of the things that was interesting was we had several people say, it's weird that I can serve in a town, like as a police officer, a firefighter, or a nurse, but I can't live in that town. And so, we're continuing to try to raise wages, but it's not keeping up with housing. You just can't right now catch up to housing. If you look at what it costs for a 1 or 2 bedroom in this area, we're finding $1,500, and that means that person needs to make $4,500 to $5,000 a month to afford that. As an LNA, in most of our facilities, they're not making $4,500 to $4,800 a month. So we started looking at it, and we decided our first project, we're actually broke ground on already in Durham. We're building an on-site childcare for one of our facilities, and 6 apartments that are going to be leased to our staff at 30% of their pay. And so we've already broken ground on that, and we're in the middle of building that project. We've also looked at a project in Dover, and that's when we've talked to Sarah, talked to a number of other people. They introduced us to Darren, and we obviously live in Exeter. We love Exeter. Our kids are going to school in Exeter. I think it'd be a great partnership. But to answer a couple of questions that we get all the time, why not build big apartment buildings, and stuff, because that's probably the most economical way to build it. We find that first of all, with a pandemic like we have right now, that's an easier way to pass that along. The other thing that happens is you hear everything that's going on with your neighbor. We want these to be individual units so that they can identify it as a home versus just a temporary place to stay. Really, our long-term goal is to attract and retain, 18 to 25-year-olds to stay in the state of New Hampshire and give them a reason to put roots in New Hampshire. And Darren, I'll add to your comment, affordable housing may be one of my dog is whining to get in the room. Can I let my dog in my room? Come on. So we have a golden that can't be out of the room with us for some reason. So I think, Darren, adding to your comment, affordable housing, but really we were at the table 6 months ago with 20 employers in the area, and we were over 20,000 employees short in the state of New Hampshire for employees. All over the state, it's not just affordable housing. We were short quality, trained individuals and professional, affordable profession. I mean, the $18 to $25 an hour group of people. And so I think we have a challenge in the future of, how do we continue to grow as a state if we don't have those people stay in the state? So that's kind of our introduction. All these smart things about what it looks like and everything else, I turn over to the architect.
Well, it's a joint vision here, but as we talk about how do we set up these affordable units, and one of the things that when you think about a place where you'd like to live, I think about when I'm in my own 4 walls, what do I want it to feel like? And when I step out of it, one of the reasons why we love living in Exeter is because it has that great downtown, and it's just such a friendly, family friendly, and it's a beautiful place to live, and we love it there. So when you think about a community that you want to live in, so we started to, we talked with Sarah Reitzman, and other members across the state about, what communities could feel like. And we really kept coming back to, pocket neighborhoods. And, we did send some, thanks to Darren, send some information around, but how some of these communities could be rethought. Pocket neighborhoods have been incredibly successful in other areas of the country, especially out west. But it's the concept of that, regardless of the size of the unit, that it takes the automobile out of to the outskirts of the community, and inside all the units, face each other. And so therefore it creates this, you get a common center of some sort and creates the community there. So we really liked this concept. And so not only do you have, if we do whatever size unit, if you have your own four walls, you can really start to feel like, this is mine. Like you have ownership and you're really proud of where you live, but, like really taking, pride in the community and in your neighbors as well. So,
they have the visuals on what things look like?
We sent them. I can share my screen and we can bring any of those up.
Yes, if you would, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
And if we're running along and skipping questions, just stop us or whatever, and we'll answer as we go.
Okay, great. I will look for hands raised and let you know if there is anyone does that.
Nancy does, never mind. That worked.
Okay.
So here's what we've been looking at. And this is a concept for the property that we're working through the town of Dover with right now. It has changed since then as we work through a lot of things. But I think to talk about the concept of these, what we're looking at again is the number of units that are situated around a common green of sorts. So we like the common green. It could be, as the residents start to take ownership of what their, of what the center could be, they can, put in plantings or community garden or, make sure that, do we have a fire pit of sorts or just community space, it's yours, like work with your neighbors and make it your own. So if you see this concept, trying to, we've got the road coming in, we'd like lanes that would make sure that we have appropriate, fire safety access. So we're following codes that we can. But again, and then these areas here, we're looking at, this is, parking spaces, and can you have storage attached to them? Ideally, we would have, maybe it's a covered garage or something in the future. We got to think like, what can we actually, what are we doing for each project? But what does an ideal situation look like? Covered garages, common garages, maybe it's a 2-story space eventually, where you could have, community space above for your cluster. So just trying to see what we can balance out. And someone said, this would be a great, if you could do solar and such. And so, how can we incorporate sustainability into this as much as possible? So each one of these are, clusters of 8 to 10, clusters of 12 work really well as well, so that you really know your neighbors across from here.
And we've designed, people ask us, floor plan as small as 380 square feet and up to about 600. So that's kind of the range. When we talk to the, especially the 18 to 25-year-olds, many of them are coming from a college dorm room where they've had a roommate or a home if they graduate high school. And so going from that setting to 384 square feet, for example, on a single unit is quite an expansion. The interesting thing we found when we started to kind of run the model by people was we didn't expect that there's a lot of people in the 50 and over crowd that are looking to downsize that like the model. There's some snowbirds that like the model. They could be up here 6, 7, 8 months a year. And everything, but our target on the one unit, one bedroom would be about $850 a month. That tends to be about a third of the pay for someone making about $16 to $17 an hour.
So I should bring up actually one of the floor plans that we're talking about, because I feel like when somebody hears 384 square feet for one bedroom, it can be a little scary feeling. You go, oh my gosh, that's small. this is what we're, one concept of something. So you basically get a common, living room, kitchen area. We've all seen tiny homes. You've got HGTV shows all over the place, and there's so many wonderful companies even in the area that are doing tiny homes. What we want to stress with these is that we're calling them cottages to differentiate in that they're not on a trailer, they're not on wheels. So whether slab on grade or some sort, but they are fixed to the location, and therefore we have a little bit of play too with our footprint. We're not relegated to an 8-foot wide trailer, so just a little bit of difference, but still a lot of those efficiencies that we're capturing. But we're looking at 1 bedroom. I think this is a queen size bed that we're fitting in your closet, your washer, dryer, in one area. You've got your bathroom here. A small utilities closet. But really what this is about, and so each unit also, I should bring in, would have a porch. And so really what we're trying to do is create boundaries in these pocket neighborhoods. You've got your common green, and then you start to layer in these ideas of private versus public. So the porch, you can be outside, that's where I like to have my coffee. But it's semi-private, it's yours. And so there's that boundary that no one's going to come in there, but you can still be interfacing with your neighbors and such. And then as soon as you enter in your unit, then that's yours. So upstairs too, there's a little loft area right now that we're including because we all have stuff to store. So that's how these are feeling. And we'd really, the interesting thing, that we're trying to do is make sure that we've got really high quality finishes in here. Again, that's something that will not only be durable, but that will, again, you can be proud of.
Another question that we get regularly is, will you be planning to sell them? We want to keep the units for a couple of reasons. Other places in the country that have sold them, they've skyrocketed in cost. Like you might sell them initially at $60,000, and the next time they sell them at $120,000 and then $180,000, and then they're not affordable really quickly. So we would keep it as one unit. We would keep ownership. We keep management under our umbrella.
And what we'd like to do, so in Dover, what we're doing is we're using all these 1-bedroom units. And so as we look for other projects or see what we can do in other areas as well, we'd really like to expand these to being 1-bedroom, 2 bedrooms, how we can work this, because, someone who's downsizing, and that's what John was referencing with some of the larger square footprints, someone who's downsizing may not want to go to this size. And then we can start to, potentially, do we have someone who has a child, and, we've got to work through all sorts of things.
And our model, depending on the size of the piece of land and the number of units that we'd put on it, we would definitely like to include like a community center. So if you want to have a Sunday Pats game, or if you want to have a common work area or a gym, we would put those sort of facilities into it. And then there's the other question that maybe we should open up to questions and just stop trying to answer questions ahead of time.
Okay. Are we okay to stop sharing the screen?
I've actually, if I may, Nancy, I just wanted to show, I know we sent them around.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to share some of what this is just a concept again. And I apologize. I know these look like cookie cutters, but it's a model that's duplicated. So in the end, we would certainly have variation and color palettes that would change. It wouldn't look exactly, but just how the scale of these start to feel. So just like I said, talking little patios and how you're talking, could we have a common pavilion or some sort of structure to help anchor it or give it its scale, or just another gathering place? And, hey, we're going to have a cluster barbecue here, we're cluster one, or I don't know. I think my parents would like to name them all after the Harry Potter houses. So we got to talk them off of that.
The only other thing I wanted to add, and I think we talked to Darren about it, was when we started developing the concept, we also have gone to a lot of area small and middle-sized businesses and taught to them about the concept of we want to offer these to our employees as benefits, keep them at cost for us, And then we were talking to other medium and small businesses about partnering with us. They don't have to come in with any cash or anything, but they might commit to 5 to 10 units and put a company van there so that employees can come to work in a company van. But there's also some, camaraderie. There's other things there, but they could offer them, but they couldn't raise the price. Whatever they lease them for is what has to go to the employee. So that will open up to questions.
And I'll just walk you through, we'll just do a quick fly through of, again, a concept of how these could feel. Landscaping is very important to these as well, because it really making them feel like they're appropriate in their settings, and it gives them, again, an idea of scale and, natural vegetation as well. But also we talk about the residents being able to do their own plantings and figure out what they want in their clusters and around their units.
Maggie, does the fly-through show where the parking is?
Kind of. It shows in this concept, as we're working through Dover, because of the constraints of the site, and I'll pause it when we back out here, the parking is all along the street in this version. So ideally what we would, so again, this is how they, Dover has started to morph, but ideally what we would do again is we would have, common garage areas, or like I said, whether we have the small turnarounds or the small access lanes that would have parking along them.
And Darren, to scale, that's just under 4 acres. It's an 8-acre piece of land we're using about 4 acres of. We would like to find a much larger piece of land so that we can kind of separate this out. This model would go much better on 18 acres or a larger piece of land. And then obviously scalability for us, the more units that we can put in place, the lower we can keep rents.
So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and we can open it up.
Okay, well, I'm going to start. First, thank you so much. This is probably the first project or idea that I've seen that I'm really excited about in a very long time. And cottages actually did come up in our committee conversations over the last year. So thank you so much for coming and for explaining this and for the sharing of the screen, because this is for educational purposes, and because of the Zoom, it'll be available for people to watch at any time. So that's a good thing. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Reitzman and then Darren Wynnum. Sarah, you had your hand up first. So
this might be more a question for Dave or Darren, but I'm wondering if there is somewhere in, so do we need to change zoning? Is there somewhere in Exeter where this works? Could this be done?
I'll let Dave answer too, but I'll say that we're looking for a spot now. I mean, I'm actively looking for a spot. We may have to look at zoning to get to the spots that I'm thinking of anyway, but maybe not. There's like 4 or 5 sites I got in mind.
On the scale that I think we're talking about, it all depends on how big it is. I mean, if you're talking about a 1 acre, with 4, then yeah, we have it. But if you're talking a 100 unit with 40 acres, then, I mean, this is something I really like the design. They have some in Hampton. There's several cottage, developments in Hampton. They didn't come out as like proposed like that, but they were built, tons of little guys, like 10 by 16s on, right next to each other. And then over time they become condominiums and now they're communities. We have them on Winnicott, we have them down on the beach. So it's it's a concept that's out there and it works. I'd like to see it, if you're talking about in Exeter, you want it when you talk about walkability, you want this near downtown centers. You'd want it to be walkable, accessible to sidewalk. I really wouldn't want to see these north of 101 or, out on land where, infrastructure is not available at this density. So they would be really good, close to town. Thinking of that, I don't know the parcels. It's going to be tough to try to find a spot that would accommodate that. But then once you do that, then you back into the zoning to see if it is. Because there are places that allow it, like in the recently approved MUND, but there's really no land area that would, facilitate it that I'm aware of in that area. But I did have a question. Can I jump in and ask a couple of questions? Because I appreciate you saying the 2-bedroom, because workforce housing is defined by the state housing developments that have over 50%, at least 50% 2-bedrooms. And these have 100% 1-bedrooms. Is that what you're?
The concept we're doing in Dover is 1-bedrooms because of the size of the piece of land. But we're looking for the next piece of land to be larger so that we could do 2-bedrooms.
Okay. Yeah. Because that attracts families, which are a demographic that, you want to maintain, because this just goes to I assume singles and couples, right? That's, and none of these are built. You don't have any built up and running, or do you?
Not yet.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah. Very, very exciting. Good concept. That's all I have for now. Thanks.
That sort of ties into my question. I was curious how far along this is and when we could see it in the flesh, your Dover project.
The Dover one, we've been actually working. We were at the TRC yesterday with them, walking through, their changes in road widths and those sort of things. So our goal was to break ground late fall this year and build next spring in Dover. And then our goal would be to have something to move. We got into this deep enough now that not only do we have an architect and a builder, but we went out and we bought an excavator. We have our own site work crew and everything else. That's how we can keep our prices down, is we do everything in-house. And so what I'm looking for is someplace to move our site work crew to after we get the site work done in Dover next spring or summer. So that's kind of, Darren's asked me a couple of times, the timeline. I'm not rushing, but we want to find that next great project. We also know that Dover matters a lot, because if we do Dover well, people are going to look at it and go, oh, I don't mind having this in my community, versus,
exactly.
Wow, this didn't come out that well. So we're really focused on it coming out well. That's why we hired additional management to run it, to oversee it. We do our own plowing, our own property maintenance. We're going to be on site nearly every single day. So that also allows us to keep up the quality. And we want something when people drive through, they think professional. They think, I want this, I don't mind this in our community. I'm sure several of you have seen the Foster's article they did on our Dover project. It was interesting. They got probably the largest response they have in a long time on an article on their Facebook page. Literally thousands of people came on, with a few people going, well, this is going to bring down property values of this. But overwhelmingly, I'd say 95% or more was, this is needed in the Seacoast. This is great. Can we reserve one? And everything else. And so the feedback was overwhelmingly positive about the project.
That's awesome.
Darren, do you still have your hand up?
Yeah, I had a couple things.
Go ahead.
I want to push back a little bit on Dave. I hate to, but I don't necessarily think this needs to be near the downtown. It does have to be on water sewer, and there's some aspirations to put water sewer in a couple different places on projects I'm working on now that, while it's not zoned for this, it could be considered for it. Also wanted to point out that I think that this type of development lends itself to more challenging parcels that have wetlands, where you wouldn't be able to put a large building, whether that's commercial or apartment building. So I like the concept where you could customize it, I think, for the property, which I think is important in Exeter, because we are really challenged our parcels. And the last thing I wanted to say was, I wonder if Maggie and John, you had mentioned, we talked about this. One of the things that you're taking a long-term view on the financing, because obviously looking at it from the outside to get those low rents, it looks like you're going to have to really be invested in this project for a very, very long time to see the return, financial return, that is, a lot of returns otherwise. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Well, I think we're, situated well. First of all, the architect is very affordable, and everything else. I don't have to pay a lot of upfront costs there. We have a good building team, and stuff like that. So the fortunate thing is, right off the top of our project, we're not pulling an $80,000, $100,000, architect salary and a builder salary off from it, and stuff like that. And not to toot our own horn, but we take about $1,800 from our company a month total for our services in our company. So we can plan and start the building process with that. Like I said, we bought our own excavator, doing all that so that we can keep prices down. But really our philosophy is, the other side of this is, we can't grow our assisted living. I've got land in Durham to build 2 more assisted livings. I can't staff them. Bottom line, I can't staff them. So I'm held up from growing my business because I can't staff 2 buildings. So for me, if I build affordable housing that brings staff to the area and staffs us, or even if it staffs other businesses, so I'm not competing with them to take away staff from us, that's our long-term investment. Also, our plan is to hold these. And the great thing about real estate, if you hold it long enough, it's going to increase in value, but eventually it gets paid off also. So that's one thing that is unique about us, is that we're not looking for that 9% return next year.
Dave Sharples, you have your hand up.
Sorry if I missed it, but are you doing this with, I know you're retaining ownership. Are you putting any deed restrictions on it? So if it does transfer, it will remain affordable to folks, and how long are those deed restrictions?
Well, to date, we haven't taken any federal funding, low income tax credits or anything else and stuff. We haven't so far. We do have a lot of people that have contacted us about doing that. If we do that, there's an automatic 15-year restriction on it. And so if you do take any tax credits or anything else, there's a 15-year restriction on it. So far, we haven't. It depends on the zoning of the project. Just to give you an idea, Darren, also is with Dover, they were willing to rezone the property, but in order to not pay, to decrease impact fees, we had to commit to leasing these at HUD levels and below, as long as the property is that and everything else. And so the impact fees, changed, or the zoning changed, and we had to commit to leasing at HUD levels or below and everything else. It wouldn't make sense, Dave, if we were to say we're going to invest our private funds into something and we're not asking for anything back, for us to restrict that property. It would devalue the property. It only makes sense if there's some sort of, added value to that project. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, understood. Understood. And then just, I don't want to get into a debate with Darren and push back, but I can write a, white paper on it if we need it, but really building density from within and avoiding greenfield development, doesn't measure up. In any financial, economic, social, environmental reasons, the advantages are enormous to stay within infrastructure and dense areas. And I could go on and on, but I don't want this to be a debate. But if the Housing Advisory Committee wants to hear more about that, and my opinion on that, I'd be happy to provide it, in a white paper. Thank you.
So thank you, Dave. Yes, if you would, when you have a moment to do that, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Does anyone
also else? just to follow up, Joe Mianacosi? Yeah, I always butcher his name.
Minicosi, Joe Minicosi.
Yeah, he's working on a thing for the New Hampshire Housing. He's working with New Hampshire Housing, looking at those things that I've looked at too, about value per acre and so forth. What we did on during the multi-story, the multifamily story map, and he's doing an analysis of Exeter, so that will be very informative as well.
Yeah, there will be a public presentation on that on the evening of October 21st. We don't have the marketing collateral from New Hampshire Housing yet, so we haven't started promoting it. But as soon as we do, we should get it to this group and to everyone else.
Nancy, if we may add that one of our important things is we don't want to force our way into a community. We want the community to want the project and stuff like that. And so we want to work with Darren and Dave and people and say, if there's the right piece of land, great, let's make it happen. We'd be excited to bring it to Exeter. I think Exeter has a great reputation with it and everything else and stuff. I think the project would fit well in Exeter. We're looking for high quality towns. Dover, Durham, Exeter are high quality towns. And so we don't want to stick these in remote places where the people still feel like they can't work and live in the same town. This would partner well with Exeter Hospital. It would partner well with a lot of different area projects and smaller businesses that are struggling to attract good people, but we don't want to force ourselves into a community.
Yeah, I really appreciate your focus on not only keeping the rents affordable, but the quality of the project and the housing for people. I tend to hear a lot of developers looking to cut corners to keep those costs down, and you're trying to find a balance. So I personally appreciate that, hearing that. So anyway, does anyone else have anything they want to ask or add or?
I will. I'll say that if you were to build this in this area, whether it be Exeter or next door or something, Osram, Sig Sauer, the hospital, Cobham, they would sign up for it instantly because they all have massive problems with finding workforce and finding workers nearby. I do think there are some sites that we can look at that wouldn't hairlip Dave or anybody else. So I'm going to continue to do that, and we'll see if we can come up with something.
And Maggie wrote a note, if I can just add real quick. Our philosophy when we did assisted living was we wanted to create some place that we would have our mom live. And now we're kind of doing it the opposite. We're trying to create tiny homes that our sons would live in. We have 3 sons between us. And so we're trying to create something. And I have a son graduating Exeter High School this year. And I've already told him, go online to school for a couple of years, live in one of the tiny homes and everything else. So we would have our own family, nieces, nephews living in these. So that's why the quality's not going to get skimped on and everything else.
We believe whether it's assisted livings or, workforce housing or wherever, that it's about living with dignity.
Yes. Thank you. Really, thank you for coming. So hopefully we can have you back in the future and with an update on how all this is working out for you and Dave's white paper and Darren's perseverance. We'll see if we can find a possibility for Exeter to enjoy some of this.
Great.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Okay, Sarah, you're up next. You are going to, you look shocked.
I totally forgot about that.
It's okay. Can you?
I was like, what do you mean I'm up next?
I sent the agenda out 3 weeks ago because of the budget committee started and I didn't want to forget. So if you would like to wait until next month, I have no problem with that. So next month we'll hear from you on explaining what workforce housing means. Remember you had your Rochester meeting.
Yeah.
It's okay. We're just going with the flow this morning. Trust me. And also, I am not seeing Robert Prine from Rockingham Planning Commission. He was going to talk to us this morning too. He did send me a snapshot or a photo of the targets on our storyboard map, but I couldn't figure out how to share that. I think I forwarded it to everyone, but I thought maybe if he was on this morning, he could do a share screen with that. And I didn't write the details down, so we'll just push that off for another month too. And did anyone have a chance to look at the meeting minutes from our September 11th meeting? If you did you see anything that needs to be corrected?
I did. It was a while ago and
it's okay.
Jumped out.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to talk about today? Okay, let me look up our next meeting before we conclude. The next meeting would be November 13th. everybody okay with that? Okay. Wow. Okay. I guess I'm not seeing any hands raised and no one seems to have any questions. So I will say this concludes our meeting this morning. Is everyone all set?
All set. Yeah, that was a good presentation. I liked
Really good.
that. That was great to.
Yeah, that'll be mulling around in my mind for a little bit too. I was really excited about a lot of it. The only part of it that I'm not quite sure about is the covenant part that Dave Sharples brought up. But
That's exactly what I wanted clarification on. I didn't understand his answer. Dave, did you?
I understood it that there aren't any deed restrictions on it.
Okay.
That's what I could ask. I hear what you're saying.
yeah, that was the only thing that, I mean, the sustainability in the future, the solar panels, you know, we're really focusing in town, or have been focusing on town, on sustainability and things like that. So I was really excited to hear about quality, affordability, sustainability, and the train is coming. So just in case I get drowned out by whistles. But that part is the only part that I'm a little on the fence about, but
Yeah,
sure it'll work out.
You could, I mean, you know, if there's no deed restrictions, then you could flip the property, you could sell it. I'm not saying, you know, but you know, things happen. So you can never be secured who owns it and what the parameters are unless you put deed restrictions. However, I will say that even deed restrictions, they're hard to administer. So sometimes I'm leaning toward what this does is they build them so small that by virtue of their size, they are affordable. And their market rate, even if they're market rate, they're also affordable. So there's an overlap between market rate and affordability. And if they maintain, you know, and they're small, that can change over time. Like in Hampton, these little condo, when they condo them, they are not that cheap. I mean, affordability wise, you know, like someone looks at the price, yeah, but what you're getting for, you know, the square footage, it's very expensive. But I like the fact that they're so small because then they're just affordable by nature and don't necessarily need deed restrictions on them, at least in today's market.
Right.
Okay. Okay, well, good to see you all, and I will see you on, I just said it, and now I can't find my note on that.
No, November 13th.
Thank you, Lovey. I wrote next meeting and never wrote the date down, so thank